Thank you, Member Clerk. Oh, they're saying that mic not working, so use this one. We're not going to ask you to say the prayer again, because the blessings will last. All right? Do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair. We have some apologies for lateness, as we were in a... some of us are still is. I have left a session. Some of us are with the University of McGill doing a postgraduate course. So classes is going on just now, but members will join in short order.
Which specific members would be late? Robert Miller, okay.
Carencia. Robert Chin.
And Moreland as well, okay. And Dr. Charles as well, okay. All right. No apologies for absence? No? Okay, thank you. Can we go through the minutes which were circulated previously? And I would ask if you have any corrections from the minutes. They are quite detailed and quite long. Anybody had a chance to go through the minutes that they would move for confirmation? Okay. Member Henriquez moved for confirmation. Can I have a seconder? Member Guy, thank you. Members, we have a lot on our agenda today. We want to continue the examination of the Ministry of Labor, in particular the NIF audit, and we have received a lot of information since our last meeting, documentation which we asked for, which we have in our possession. And if we have time and complete the Ministry of Labor, then we would like to begin the Ministry of Finance's audit of the Auditor General's Department. Can you invite in the Ministry of Labor team, please? Let's invite in the Ministry of Labor's team. Morning, Madam Pierce, and welcome to you and your team. Could I ask you to introduce the members of the team who are here with you?
Yes. Morning, Chairman, morning, committee members, members of the Auditor General's team, and Ministry of Finance. With me today, I have Mrs. Audrey Dare-Williams, Chief Technical Director in the Ministry, Mr. Jason Anderson, Principal Financial Officer, Mr. Dave McIntosh, Transitional Manager at the NIF, Mr. Ludlow Bowie, Director Real Estate, and Mr. Lucian Smith, Acting Chief Internal Auditor for the Ministry.
Thank you, Pierce, and let me thank the Ministry for providing the documentation which we asked for. I'm going to start with the internal auditor's review of the documents which were submitted. You provided a 2-page report, and could I just ask you if you could take us through the report based on the additional information that you would have received since the last meeting. And we have a lot of information. There were some contracts related to Cronus's engagement, board minutes of the NIF, other entities that were engaged during that period. So there's quite a bit of documentation. So I'll ask you, sir, to just take us through your review of the documentation.
I'm going to report on the internal auditor's review of the documents. So after the last committee meeting,
Hold one sec, but I'd prefer if he gives you're going to report on what he has provided here?
Okay, well, he could do...
Yeah, so let him go first, and then we can take the comments after.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Good morning, members. Good morning, everyone. We were presented with some sets of documents that our internal audit unit went through. One of the issue raising from the report was the $5,000 payment to Cronus. We had subsequently received a receipt to confirm that the payment was made to the supplier on the same day that the contract was endorsed by the accounting officer. In relation to another point that was raised in the report, in relation to the absence of formal arrangement beyond May 2013, the unit received unsigned documents purporting to be arrangement between the supplier and NIF. That would cover the period up to June 2014.
Can you explain that, please? I am lost.
Sorry, yeah, just for clarity, unsigned mean, because I saw it was signed by the supplier, but not signed by NIF.
Yes, that is it. It was only signed by the service provider. In relation to the procurement matter that was raised on page 21, where we requested documents for 5 companies, we had indicated that we only received procurement documents for only 3. This position remains unchanged. We have yet to receive documentation that support procurement of WeResolve and Equilibrium Solutions was done in accordance with the GOJ procurement guidelines. What we received in relation to WeResolve were maintenance agreements are our interim contract. However, there is a particular quote that confirms that this document is a quote and not a contract.
So you're saying it still doesn't satisfy
No.
you? Okay. All right.
Can the Chair, if I may, can the auditor just explain further what he meant when he said that the interim contract maintenance agreement indicate that the document is a quote and not a contract? Can you just explain exactly what you mean by that?
Will do.
That's on page 2 of your report, item in IAU update. The second to last paragraph. Yeah.
All right. WeResolve agreement contract. I think it is point 5. It's called economic valuation. I was actually trying to locate the document so I can read verbatim from it.
You're close to located that document?
I have.
You have it?
I
Okay.
have. Apologies for the wait. Right. So heading 5 of the maintenance agreement, or all the agreements seen in relation to we resolved, it is basically a similar document. So section 5 of it, heading economic valuation, it indicated that this document is a quote, not a contract. This is coming from the document itself, from the supplier. It said that if this quote is accepted, will be returned, signed, and sealed, indispensable condition for the drafting of a legal contract.
Member Sibley's, does that answer your question? Okay, thank you. Madam Pierce, you wanted to comment on it?
No, I mean, if the auditor is finished. I had found the document, but I was going to explain, but he found it.
Okay, so you have nothing further to say on okay, internal auditor. Member Sibley's?
In light of the circumstances, through UPS to Ms. Dare, when we were here last, your comment was that the documents are there. Could you just start from there in light of what the internal auditors would have submit, and to assist us from there?
Sure. Good morning. Good morning. So my reference to the documents were there was in specific reference to the addenda for the Kronos contract, which I believe we have supplied. In relation to we resolve, I do believe that I subsequently sent a signed agreement to the auditor. If I hadn't, because we did locate the signed agreement. So if he hasn't gotten it, we do have it in our possession.
All right, just for clarity, is this the document we're referring to?
It looks similar, but the one that I sent to him subsequently was signed. I am the one who actually signed it. So
hold on 1 second. So, Sir Auditor, can you confirm receipt of that and satisfaction with that document?
I can confirm that I had received that document. However, that document bears the same information that I had communicated. The document explicitly stated that this is a quote. It is not a contract.
Our understanding was that it represented the signed agreement, but we can continue looking because that is what the team handed me as the signed agreement. And so I thought that that would satisfy the auditor.
And you believe that document is somewhere at the NIF and can be found and identified?
It should be.
Okay. Member Sibley's? Yeah.
Yes, Chair. So, are we to understand, Ms. Dare, that it is your belief that a contract was signed?
Was signed. It is my belief that a contract was signed.
And however, there is the challenge we are having, and I suppose the internal auditor is having, you see, is that the document which he has in his possession has a paragraph that states, this is a quotation.
Right, and not a contract.
Would you agree with me, therefore, that it is quite possible there had been an oversight of the department in ensuring that the document that was signed
Was actually a contract.
was a contract. It's an oversight on your, and it could be an oversight on the department.
It quite possibly could be, and so that is why I would ask the team to continue looking for the document. But it possibly could be. It is possible that the team thought that what they got was in fact a contract and not a quote. So it's quite possible. It is, I'm not going to deny.
A follow-up, Chair, is I think what taxpayers would want to hear right now to the PS and to the PS as well is what system is in place to prevent a reoccurrence of this.
Thank you, member. Since the audit, a number of steps have been put in place to prevent a reoccurrence of this. Firstly, we have since established a procurement committee within the ministry. We have sent a number of members of staff on training as it relates to procurement. Additionally, in 2019, I am looking for it, in 2019, I had also written to the then chairman of the NIF, outlining clear instructions as to how funds should be moved from the NIF into its various types of investments and accounts, a procedure that would see greater level of accountability being exercised. And ultimately, member, many, if not all of these things now come to me for final signature. Even if there is a board approval, the board approval says that the board has endorsed a particular course of action. It does not negate following the normal GOG procurement guidelines.
Chair, we are not, I don't think we are proposing increased bureaucracy. What we are proposing, what I would have loved to hear, Madam PS, is that there are persons who are going to be, who are assigned with the requisite skill set to read and go through all your contracts, and that the procurement officer within the department or the agency is assigned to go through these contracts and ensure that the guidelines or the act is complied with thoroughly. I am hoping that that is now in place, because we would want a repeat of this.
What is in place as what is required under the FAA is that the permanent secretary signs all contracts. So there is no escaping of another officer signing such a contract without it coming to me. That procedure has been put in place, along with, as I said before, training of the relevant officers for them to realize or understand the correct procurement procedures and what constitutes a contract.
So with your signature, it would indicate that all the controls have been complied with. So we are not expecting this, a similar matter to come before us next time.
No.
Thank
member.
you, PS.
Certainly not since this audit.
PS, do you have the legal personnel within the ministry to assess these the contracts and all the other types of arrangements that you enter into with suppliers?
Yes, Chairman, we do have legal personnel within the ministry that are required to vet all the various contracts.
All right, thank you.
It does create a bottleneck, I will admit, but that is in place.
Okay, thank you. Members, are there any other questions on the NIF audit?
Chairman,
Yes, Member Guy.
just a follow-up to the last question you asked the PS. PS, do you contract externally legal services?
Pardon me? I didn't.
Do you contract to external persons legal services for the ministry?
Not for routine for the ministry. The NIF, based on some of its various types of investments and so forth, will from time to time retain external legal services, but we don't retain external legal services to vet government contracts. That's done by our internal legal staff.
So the contracts of the NIF then would not be technically government contracts?
They are government contracts.
No, I'm trying to get the difference in terms of how you reported it just now.
You asked a general question, which is how I was answering, whether NIF retains, still uses external legal counsel.
The ministry.
If the ministry uses, oh, sorry, I thought the question was in relation to the NIF. The ministry itself proper, when I said the ministry proper, the central ministry, we don't retain external legal counsel unless it is a special consultancy to do maybe some legislative work or something, but not to review government contracts like procurement of goods and services.
Okay.
Do you also liaise or interface with the Attorney General's department on these issues, or your internal legal counsel provides that guidance and it stops there?
For routine contracts or internal legal counsel, if there is a matter of dispute between, the procuring entity and a supplier, then we do call on the Attorney General chambers. But the chambers would be overburdened if we were to ask them to review routine contracts for the ministry.
Member Sibley's.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to go to page 11 of the report. Report that marks Internal Audit Quarterly Report, March 2018, Ministry of Labor and Social Security. With regards to fixed assets, the internal auditor had stated that between the period 2016 to 2018, the examination of the internal auditor was that records were not properly maintained or updated to reflect all acquisition. An example cited was that computers purchased valuing $3,395,616.62 were not recorded in the master or individual inventory. Of interest, Madam PS, is the fact that in the right-hand corner where management response, it is saying response outstanding. I don't know if there has been an updated. I figured there must have been an updated.
Yes, member.
One, but
I'm
explain?
hoping that we are not getting confused, because this report that was presented to the Parliament was a quarter report for the quarter ending March 2018. It was an internal audit quarter report that was prepared by the Chief Internal Auditor. Members will recall that subsequently there was a request based on the Auditor General's report of 60 outstanding management responses. There was a request to provide an update on all of those management responses. So this member would have been the fulsome report. What you would have gotten subsequently would have been extracts that would have covered this period. So in that, if I were to go back to the report that was presented to the Parliament from the internal auditor that gave an update on the status of those internal audit reports, and I'm just going to read what is here. The auditor had indicated that they had received the responses, and they had indicated also that they would have to do subsequent audits in order to verify the update, meaning that the ministry was now keeping abreast of updating its master inventory list and so forth. But the responses were in fact provided to the internal auditor.
Madam PS, can you just explain to the committee what has been done? What controls are now in place to prevent what the auditor has written? Thank you.
Okay. I think at some meetings ago, I had explained to the committee that at the time of this audit, the ministry that is housed in some almost 30 different locations, we had one person along with a clerk doing updating of the master inventory and updating of all the inventory. Since then, we have reassigned additional staff into the unit to ensure that the master inventory are continually updated. Since then as well, there was a specific exercise, all-island exercise, to update the master inventory. And I know the Director of Administration is in dialogue with a particular supplier to help us in terms of a specific software that would allow us to manage, better able to manage our inventory, especially the master inventory, when you have offices spread out all over the island and hundreds of staff and equipment all over, new equipment being purchased, board of survey, and so forth.
So if the Auditor General or the internal auditor were to come and do an audit, they would still see some elements of what is in the report based on your response, that it is an ongoing exercise and you have not completely put in all the measures as yet?
We have put in as much measures as we could at the time. What I explained is that we're looking to put in even more measures to ensure that we do not fall behind in updating our master inventory for the ministry with the use of technology. But if the auditors were to go in, they would certainly find a better state of affair. The ministry is continually procuring equipment, furniture, and so forth. And periodically, we do board of survey items. So it is an ongoing process of adding to the inventory, subtracting from the inventory. And as you add, you have to update your various location registers. So it's an ongoing process, member. But what I would say is that if the auditors went in, no, they should find, based on the steps that we have and the measures we have put in place, they will find certainly a better state of affair with respect to the managing of the ministry's inventory.
And PS, just move to page 12 because it's very concerning with regards to air conditioned unit. The report says that 100 air-conditioned units are installed at your North Street office. However, no formal records were maintained to account for the asset. Have that been addressed?
Yes, member. I think I'm going to have to look on, try and find my update, which I did not walk with today because I didn't know we were going to be discussing those matters. But it has been updated. I believe some meetings ago I did report to the committee that we had gone about and done an island-wide inventory of all our air conditioning units right across the island. And that information was used as the basis on which we procured a service contract for our air conditioning units, and that is one of the contracts that is in place. No.
But specifically...
Member Sibley, just 1 second. Was there an update provided to us based on this document? I'm trying to remember. Because I think this was the internal audit of 2018, and I remember there were a number of outstanding responses. I'm just trying to remember if we got an update in terms of the status of these responses. We did?
Yes, it was presented.
Okay. All right, because member cities, I don't want us to, I'll allow you, but I don't want us to go overground if the update had provided an answer. Where's that document, just so that we can...
But if I may, I just want some specific answers, because some of the updates that were given are general updates. Example, the update that the PS just gave, which says this is a specific finding about North Street. And I have not received an answer, with all due respect, Madam PS, with regards to North Street, because I am okay with a general view that all the offices,
including the North Street office,
but as it relates to this particular $4 million spent, which as it relates to air conditioning, has this been resolved satisfactory to you? Because we are going to ask, I suppose the auditor will do follow-up But we want to know, being that it is in the report and presented to us, if it has been resolved satisfactorily.
Just 1 second. Could I ask the auditor, based on the updated document, whether this was one of the issues that you got the follow-up responses on this one?
Yes, we had a discussion with the operational manager, and they had communicated that the process to address the matters had started October 2020. The projection, at this point, when we had done the update, it was for air conditioning. He had advised that it was 50% complete. And the issues surrounding asset management will be resolved. He's putting it no later than December 2021.
December 2021?
Yes, no later than that.
But that can be satisfactory.
He had communicated some challenges in relation to the software and some other system glitch. So when we went and we checked, we have seen where some corrective actions were being taken,
Okay.
but the matters have not been resolved completely.
All right. Okay, thank you. Madam Pierce, you know what those issues are, or that hasn't been brought up to your attention yet?
As I explained earlier, I know that they're in the process of procuring a particular software to help us better manage the assets. But with respect to the air conditioning units and the inventory that was done, there was an inventory that was done late last year, which would have been the October 2020. And then that information that was collected to put the air conditioning units on inventory was the basis on which a service contract was procured. So I do know that the air conditioning units, the mini-split units for the ministry, are on an inventory list. Whether they're on a paper inventory or an electronic inventory, where we're moving is to get all our records in an electronic inventory system. So I think that is what the auditor is referring to as outstanding.
Okay, all right, thank you. Member Sibley's, you're still...
Chair, I suppose the auditor will give us a follow-up on that with regards to, because I'm hearing two different things. I'm hearing that the operation or the maintenance manager is saying that we will not be able to achieve this until December 2021. And I'm hearing from the PS that is using the technology of computers, software to get this, but manually there is an inventory of all these air conditioning unit. That's what I'm hearing.
Yes, that's what you're hearing.
You have more questions, Member Sibley's?
Not at this time, Chair.
Any other members have any other questions for the Ministry of Labour, either on the NIF audit or any of the other documentation that would have been provided to us? All right, if that's the case, let me thank the Ministry of Labour for being here.
Chair,
yes,
if I may, I believe at the start of this process, there was a request with regards to the Farmwork audit. I think it was Member Holness who had requested. See? So I don't know if there's any update or if the PS can recall the request.
I remember it came up in a discussion. I don't know if it was a specific audit, but I know concerns were expressed by members, and I think the minister in Parliament last week or week before would have spoken to those concerns, I think, which really relates to the very low numbers of persons who are successful in the program. And I think there was a concern about those overseas and some outstanding monies. Was that it, Member Siblings? I'm trying to remember the exact matter raised by Member Holness.
What Member Holness had requested was a report on the program, because we are informed that that area has been audited by the Auditor General, the overseas, and Member Holness also make inquiry of what if the local account has been audited.
There were some questions that were asked. I think it was during a sitting.
Yes, let me just help you. I'm seeing I'm seeing here in response to the questions raised, you wrote to the committee clerk on the 28th of January 2021, and these were the questions raised by MP Holness in relation to the overseas Farmwork program. I'm not going to read it, but there's a document which is entitled Response to Questions from Public Accounts Committee, Refunds Received from Overseas for the Ministry's Farmwork Program. This was provided to us members, I think about 2 or 3 meetings ago. So the specific concerns that were raised were responded to and addressed by the ministry. I don't know if you have that document, Member Siblings. It was sent to us. I'll ask the clerk to just resend, but I know we get a lot of documents, so we may have overlooked it, but there was definitely a response from the ministry.
With respect to that document, though, member, I will only provide one further update to that, because Member Holness had asked what was the balance in the account. So if the committee wishes, I can update that figure, at least up to maybe the end of April, and provide the committee with basically the same words, but an updated figure in terms of the balance. Because what was reported was the balance up to December 2020.
Okay, thank you. And let me thank the Ministry of Labour. We have had a number of, sorry, Member Henrique, sorry.
Sorry, thank you very much, Chair. Just to clarify one thing before we let them go, is the issue about path. We were talking about last time setting up a specific meeting.
I didn't forget. That was the last thing I was going to say, that all the members here, new, returning, have all expressed a desire for us to have a sensitization meeting, not just on PATH, but all the other programs that are run by the ministry, so that MPs can be aware of what exists out there and how best they can help their constituents. And we can do it via Zoom, so I'll liaise with you and see how quickly we can arrange to have that meeting done.
Yes, Chairman. We have been liaising with the Parliament to find a date for some time, but I am going to propose that maybe we just set it, and those who can attend, it's going to be virtual, participate.
Yeah, man.
Because we have been ready to do it, but we just haven't been able to.
You're not going to find a date convenient to everybody, but I think
we're gonna.
we can look at the parliamentary schedule. We meet on Tuesdays and Wednesdays because of the sectorial. There are committee meetings, but this, I think every MP would value this and would value it sooner rather than later, so that we can inform our constituents in a better manner. So let's just set a date and we try work with that.
Okay.
Member Miller, then Member Charles. Sorry, go ahead.
Chairman, just to finish that point, I understand the overall position that you were just speaking about, but I don't want us to get lost on this specific issue of PATH. and the detail related to how and the whole issue is about updating or looking at the method by which path is administered and so forth, that is very critical specifically. I don't want us to lose sight of that specific meeting on that specific subject, along with the rest.
Okay.
So
Point
members
taken.
are asking for a specific meeting on path separate from the other, to look at the other programs in the ministry. Is that what I'm hearing?
I think it can be combined, but I think what Member Henriquez is saying is we don't want to overlook the detail. The concerns are people out there don't know exactly what the criteria is. We want to help them, to guide them in the best way. When they're not selected, they are told reasons which may not be the right reasons. So I think the point is there's a level of detail that I think needs to be provided during that meeting so that we can inform our constituents in a better manner.
Chair,
Okay.
I'm sorry to
I
keep
think
going here.
members, we might be looking at more than 1 day.
That's
for us to
possible, but
meet
Chair, you see, I just want, and I'm
based
sorry
on
to
the
do this
amount of information.
to stretch it out, PS, but even just this morning, I got called about people that are down there going to do application, and then they're telling me that they were told that they don't qualify or whatever. Yet still they're being told that an officer will come to their place and they must appeal, and an officer will come there. And all I'm saying is that there is still a very lot of confusion and difficulty in this whole system, different from what we were hearing before. There seems to be a lot of issues. And as I said, I just don't want us to miss, because it's a very important area within our constituencies, and I just don't want it to get lost in the crossover of all the little issues, all the other programs. Some time needs to be spent here and deal with these
Member
issues.
Henriquez, I will assure that is done, because I can also say as an MP, I get the complaints. I think all of us do, and I think the sooner we are in a position to better inform our constituents, the better. So let's expedite that in terms of identifying a date. If it means 2 meetings, then I think so be it, but it is a very important issue. Member Miller.
Thanks, Sir Chair. I can't recall if certain issues were addressed re the Farmwork program. So if you permit me just to ask a few, Sir Chair. I've read it. I glimpsed through it a while ago, shortly. In terms of the liaison officers that are selected for the program in Canada, how those persons are selected?
The last time we hired liaison officers for Canada was approximately 3 years ago, and those were selected based on interviews were conducted.
It's a criteria that they must be Jamaican, right?
There is, no, not necessarily. Not at the time when we were doing those interviews 3 years ago. But yes, there is a criteria that they must be Jamaican.
But not 3 years ago. It wasn't a criteria.
Sorry, 3 years ago it was a criteria that they had to be Jamaicans. They didn't have to be Jamaicans residing in Jamaica, but they could be Jamaicans residing in Canada.
So it's fair to say that we have persons in Canada that are liaison officers that are residents or citizens of Canada.
Yes.
Okay, in terms of compensation and benefits, through the ministry they are paid, or how does it operate?
They are paid in Canada. They're not paid through the ministry. It's not a charge on the recurrent expenditure. The document that you have, which I had packed away, this document that you received explained the deductions that are made from the farm workers' earnings and how the funds are used. And some of the funds are utilized to cover the administrative expenses in Canada, which include the payment of liaison officers, their traveling, and so forth.
So it's apart from traveling, does these liaison officers also get accommodation?
They're provided with an allowance for housing.
And those also who are regarded as residents and citizens of Canada as well?
Yes.
Okay.
What I will point out is that Canada has a generous system where you can become a resident or a citizen. And I believe what may have happened over time is that persons have been there for an extended period and then apply for their residency and then apply for their citizenship.
So in that case, is it a situation where they would have lost the benefit, especially those persons who have their own accommodation? Is there a situation that we have to still pay the accommodation where those persons are concerned?
You know, member, it's not something we have looked at. I will probably ask the Auditor General that to maybe look at that and make some recommendation. I believe what has happened is, and I'm just going off, you know, what I know exists now. I believe what may have happened is that somebody would have been employed under particular terms and conditions, and those terms and conditions continue in terms of their emoluments.
Fair enough. My final question, PS, is I know Minister Samuda, in his sectoral debate in Parliament last week, stated that over 5,500 persons might apply for the Farmwork program, and from that amount, just about 750 are selected. Can you tell the committee as to the criteria that is used to select persons who actually get through on the Farmwork program, and why is it just so minimal in terms of persons who actually get through?
So to clarify, the figure Minister Samuda referred to in Parliament, the 700 plus, were 700 plus new persons who traveled last year in 2020. The criteria is, well, let me say at the outset that there is more demand, meaning the Farmwork program has been around for 78 years now, from 1943 with the United States. And it has become a household name in Jamaica. Thousands of families have benefited from the Farmwork program, whether they're parents or grandparents. And the demand for spaces is more than the supply in terms of jobs. So we rely on new jobs being found to place new persons, and we also rely on persons exiting the program. Now, somebody may exit the program because of age, illness, or they don't perform well for various reasons. They will exit the program. So the demand is greater than the supply for jobs. So what we need to do is to get more employers employing our workers. Now, the requirements for the program, first and foremost, the persons have to be literate and numerate. There was a time when persons didn't need to be literate and numerate to be on the program. But agriculture has changed over the years. Agriculture is more modernized, especially in Canada, the greenhouses, they're using a lot more advanced technology. So our workers have to be not just literate, but they also have to be numerate. They have to have farming experience. There's a preference for persons who have farming experience. No criminal record. If they have a criminal record, the United States or Canada is not going to grant them the visa. And they also should never have been denied a visa from any jurisdiction. Because if you, and this is my theory now, I have no evidence to say, but if you have been denied a visa by the United States, and you apply for a visa for Canada, right, for example, invariably that jurisdiction is highly unlikely that they're going to grant you the visa. And I guess they...
Sorry, PS. Is there a timeline in terms of not being denied?
I can't tell you that. That is up to the Canadian High Commission and the U.S. to decide. But what I'm telling you is that if you have been denied a visa before from another jurisdiction, U.S., Canada, UK, which are the typical jurisdiction, it is more difficult for somebody that we send up to be granted that visa. So we tend to say never been denied a visa, because we want that when we send persons to the embassies or the High Commission for them to be granted the visa.
All right, just in terms of order, Member Charles.
Last question.
Oh, you have one more question?
Yes. Just to say as well that you have many persons who are complaining that they have gone on the program already. Maybe they have served at one farm, and the farm is no longer taking females, and they're just basically out of the woods. They don't know what is happening. Also, there's a set that did medical, and they haven't heard anything since from the ministry. Does the ministry keep in contact with these persons to let them know, what is happening, or let them know if you're not interested in them again because they didn't do well on the farm that they went to?
So remember, if they have done a medical, it means that it's somebody we're interested in, and it's somebody that we're trying to place in a job, right? Now, if the worker has been going to a particular employer and the employer does not request them back, there's very little we can do, because we cannot force the employer to take person X when they have not. And I don't know the specific circumstance with respect to the female that you're speaking about. I don't know if it's 2020, because 2020 we did see generally a reduction in the overall numbers going, because I guess, COVID and some of those restrictions.
All right, Member Charles, then Clark, Williams, and then Holness. And
Thank you,
then
Chair.
Sibbles.
My question, good morning, everyone. My question is very similar to Member Miller. When someone gets recommended to the Farmwork Overseas Program, can you just briefly walk me through, I know some time, but briefly walk me through what happens? Because a lot of persons in my constituency will tell me that there's no communication between the ministry and them. They'll go in and they never hear back from them. So they don't know. So they're always asking me to call and to find out their status. Do you have a specific team that deals with those persons? Because there's so many questions that I can't answer about their status at that time, and many of them don't know their status. They think that they get a card and they're good.
Right. So, member, as Minister Samuda pointed out last week in his sectoral, the way we approach things is under review. So I can explain to you what we generally do, but those procedures will be changing in the coming weeks and months. So the issuing of a form, which is colloquially referred to as a card, it's an application form. It is the first point of application for the program. Usually when those forms are issued, at some point in time after, we call the persons to do what we call a pre-screening. We generally do it regionally. We would have one in the western part of the island. Yes, that's usually what we call the selection process. So from that is where you would then it's the first cut, where you remove those who are not literate, who clearly don't have any agricultural experience, and so forth, based on the criteria that I just outlined. After that, you then, all the persons who then would have been pre-screened, right, are then put in a database. Now, those who immediately at the point of pre-screening, the person is told whether they have made the cut or they have not made the cut, all right? So if they have not made the cut, they will be told right there and then. If they've made the cut, then additional information, I believe, is taken from the individual to be able to populate our database. They then go in our database, and at that point in time, we then, at usually around October, November of each year, based on the trend, the previous trend of previous years, we know, for example, that we will be able to place about between 800 to 1,000 new persons each year. So somewhere about October, November, we do a random selection from that database to randomly select from what is in the database to begin moving them to now the second stage. The second stage, this is where they will be called in to do a medical. If they have passed the medical, then they move to the next stage, which then is the visa application. But the visa application is done and they are put in a sort of a wait stage. So what we do, we pre-prepare a batch of persons each year between 800 and 1,000 based on the trend that we know we're gonna, be able to place between 800 and 1,000 new persons. We pre-prepare those 800 to 1,000 persons, and in the upcoming year, by January, February, when the season starts to pick up in February, once we get a slot, then the persons are assigned into that position. So there are different stages of the process, and each stage, someone may be eliminated. So from the first step, which is the pre-selection, then they come in and they do the medical, the visa, and so forth.
Yes, Chair. One last question. Who in the ministry is responsible for recruiting new employers? Since you said there's not a lot of them, is there a team that goes out and recruits employers that are abroad? We have the liaison officers that promote the program within the different jurisdictions, but based on the laws governing the various jurisdictions, we may not be able to directly solicit, but you can promote the program within the various jurisdictions. We do, for the U.S. program, work with a particular agent that is called Florida East Coast Travel Services, and I am aware that they also help to promote the Jamaican worker. So we can promote, as a country, the Jamaican worker, right? And encourage employers to employ the Jamaican worker. What we cannot do directly is, it's done in a more covert manner, based on the different laws and so forth operating in the jurisdiction. We can, we attend, for example, employers' meetings when they have them, and we speak to employers broadly about the program and Jamaican workers and so forth. One last thing. I think that this aspect is something that when you're reviewing, you can put that in, because everywhere in the world, Jamaicans are the best at whatever we do. We're the best doctors, we're the best lawyers, anywhere you go in the world. And I think that we're the best farmers, and a lot of people in my constituency love and depend on this Farmwork Overseas program. I mean, my father is known for it.
Right.
So if you can get a team together legally and promote us the way we do tourism and reggae, it would be really good for us.
Right.
So I think you should put that
There
somewhere.
It is something we're looking at, especially for the United States, because we think there's a lot of growth potential there to possibly contract persons independently to solicit on our behalf.
All right, Member Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Madam PS. The Farmwork program is audited yearly.
Yes, it is audited yearly.
And by whom? And by whom?
By the Auditor General. Well, the aspect of the program in Canada is audited annually by the Auditor General. However, for 2020, no audit was done, and I mean, everybody's affected by COVID, so.
So you're saying it is due to COVID why no audit was done for 2020?
Well, let me not speak for the Auditor General, but no audit was done in 2020. I'm just assuming it was because of COVID and restrictions.
Mr. Chairman, through you, sir, is it possible for us to get an answer from Madam AG?
Madam AG, could you speak to that, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The audit of the Farmwork program is generally conducted between June and August each year. There were travel restrictions. We still cannot go into Canada. It's not done here in Jamaica. We have to travel overseas to do the audit.
Okay. All right. No.
All right, go ahead, member.
To the AG, with regards to those audits, when those audits are done, are they tabled here?
The audits. The audits are generally included in the annual report. So no report would have been included in the annual report for this financial year because an audit was not conducted.
So, Mr. Chairman.
So if you look at the annual reports for the previous years, you will see matters relating to the Farmwork program.
So, Mr. Chairman, just want to know from the AG, this audit, with the exclusion of 2020, and we understand 2020, is it that you are the person who does it personally or a team from your office that goes there to do it?
Someone check.
Okay, so the audit, I believe I would need my colleagues to help me here, but based on a cabinet submission some years ago, following a matter that was public, there was a requirement for the Auditor General and another senior member of staff to conduct the audit. So from the initial stages of the audit, it was done by the Auditor General. So formally, it would have been Mr. Strawn and another senior member of staff. And when I became Auditor General, it became me and another member of staff.
Mr. Chairman, through you, either of both ladies can answer this question. Are you of the view, since you have been doing the audit of the Farmwork program, and since Madam PS has been receiving the audit report, are you of the view that you're getting value for money from the liaison persons? We're paying the liaison person to do a job. After doing your audit, can you safely say here today that you think they are giving us value for money?
The liaison officers well, they all fall in the category of liaison officers, those that are administrative, those that are in-house, and those that travel out to the farm. Those that travel out to the farm, they provide reports of their visits to the various farms. I can speak for those that are in office, that based on our audit, there are matters that we may see that, and we would report to them. There are certain areas that required improvement, which I saw over the years. I have no reason to question that they're doing their job. As it pertains to the liaison officers that travel out, we actually, and I'm going to ask my colleague to speak more closely to that, because I believe that's an area that she would have paid much closer attention to than I would have. But what we have seen are visits based on submissions made by the officers. In our exit interviews, one of the concerns raised was the number of liaison officers and how they were spread, I think, allocated to the various farms, and the number of visits that were made to each farm. I have not done an in-depth review of it to say that we're getting value for money. I would really require more than my just reviewing to see the visits, because the proof of the pudding is in the eating. You'd really have to now communicate with the farm owners and the workers. I have done visited 2 to 3 farms. Those were select farms. Those that I interacted with, the impression was that they were satisfied, but I did not visit all the farms.
Through the chair, the question I think he's asking is whether or not we have ever really done any form of performance audit as it relates to either the Canadian program or the US program, because it gives you an idea as to whether or not there are any targets set. And it ties back into the question asked by Member Charles, in that you have liaison officers, you have a program. To what extent have we put effort into increasing the volume of persons being requested from Jamaica if we have found this to be a viable option for Jamaicans to be able to go overseas and work on the Farmwork program? So I have not heard anything at all that gives any indication that we are driven in terms of our performance to have more and more of our farmers having the opportunity to go off on the program in the US or in Canada. That's not my question.
Along that line, Chair, just for further clarification when the AG answers. What I would like to hear is what is the scope of the audit that is conducted by the Auditor General when they go to do the audit. The scope, knowing the scope is going to be very important for any questions asked.
Madam. A whole heap of questions we have asked, so I'll kind of allow the AG.
I wanted to give her some information in the same sense of it, Mr. Chairman,
okay.
if I may. I just want to say to the AG that we have realized that other countries are getting more and more persons into their Farmwork program, whilst we are losing the same space. So it was along that line, or that was the subject of the matter, why I asked the question the way I asked it, and also how Madam Holness placed the attachment to it, because that is what is happening.
Mr. Chairman, I think the matter also requires the intervention of the PS. Why? Though we do the objective of the audit really is to form an opinion on the financial statements. And with that, of course, I do a compliance audit in support of that. I do not do a performance audit. That will require a much longer time. But of course, in my entrance meeting and my exit meeting, we discuss many things surrounding the program and the matters affecting the program. And I do believe that there are other issues at the governmental level that is very relevant to the program and the continued discussion, because every year, I think since I have been doing the audit, there's always been a threat that there will be some reduction in the numbers coming from Jamaica or taken from Jamaica because of discussions there. Now, I don't know that this is anything that has, I don't know the extent to which it has elevated, but I'm just sharing with you what the staff has shared with me. My understanding is that for the Canadian program, and the PS can correct me here, is that Jamaica has the larger chunk of the pie when compared to other countries, and that may be an issue. So everybody is lobbying, I think, for their own for their own footing.
If we, Chairman, if we were to compare Jamaica with the rest of the Caribbean, both for the U.S. and Canada, for the English-speaking Caribbean, we have the largest share. Where the greatest competition is from is the Central American countries, and in particular Mexico. One of the reasons for that is Mexico, it's a land border. The cost of transportation, which is the employer's cost, it's cheaper for an employer to hire a Mexican as opposed to a Jamaican. So when we sell the program and we promote our workers, we're promoting them based on their ability to perform in terms of the job that they do. But each year, if you were to track the numbers over the last maybe 5 or so years, that are about 6 or 7 years, if you look at the numbers, in particular for Canada, the numbers have been steadily increasing year over year. I think maybe the only year we probably will see a dip is 2020, and the dip is not a big dip relative to what we would have expected, because of course, as AG pointed out, there is restriction on travel to Canada. So where we have not been able to grow the program in any significant way is with the United States, and I suspect it is primarily because of the ease at which a Mexican worker can move across the border and the lower cost.
Mr. Chairman, through you to Madam PS, when you tally numbers as it relates to the number of persons on the program, do you tally both from government and also from the private entities?
We don't tally from the private entities.
Okay.
So when we report, we are reporting. Okay, so what I must also point out to the House.
I got the answer.
No, but I need to clarify something, because I want the members to be aware that by law, only the government of Jamaica can place workers in both the U.S. and Canada to work on farms. If there are any private employment agencies out there doing it, it is in contravention of the law. All right? So, but you have private persons that can place persons in job in other areas, hospitality and so forth.
So are you aware, have it ever been brought to your attention, has it at any time been alleged in your hearing that we have a, how I would put it now, a agency within an agency or a liaison person within a liaison group wherein you are employed by the government as a liaison officer to the Farmwork program in Canada or America, and you operate on the side? Are you aware of that?
No, I'm not aware of that.
Something that you can check into, please.
I'm not aware of that. But remember, the U.S. Embassy and the Canadian High Commission, as it relates to the Farmwork program, knows that to place persons in agricultural employment, those applications can only come from the Ministry of Labor and Social Security. So I'm not aware of any private agency locally that are sending applications to the Canadian High Commission or the U.S. Embassy for persons to work in agricultural establishments. It happens for other types of employment, but I'm not aware of agriculture.
Speaking of the Farmwork program, that's where it's at. Are you knowledgeable in any way of the fact that within our local organization, the ministry, that position are hustled around, meaning that persons, and I give you a living example, Anthony Gray, Rose Heights, Montego Bay, did everything, medical and everything. Went to check, why is it, at the ministry, why is it that he has not heard anything, and was told by the officer that he went on the program already. Yet he produced his passport to say, see my passport there, he never left the country, so how you have it to me travel already? Only to find out on further investigation that the position was sold.
Member, I'm not aware of those specific instances. What I will ask and encourage...
I can give you a contact number for Mr.
Well,
Gray,
I need it. What I will ask and encourage all members of Parliament, because this is something that we have been working with various authorities to try and stamp out, all right, and remove.
To stamp out what?
What you say, people selling
you say you weren't aware.
But I don't know of it, meaning any form of corruption with respect to the program.
But then who is stamping out?
Pardon me?
Who is stamping out?
No, I'm saying if we are aware, if any reports come to us of anything that is happening untoward, we are working to ensure that any reports that come to us is vigorously investigated. But I'm not aware of any specific that you spoke about.
I beg to disagree with what you're saying now, Madam Pierce, because you use the phrase stamp out. And
well, maybe it was an incorrect phrase, but we know colloquially what we mean to eliminate, to remove, to not have that happen. What you just said, meaning somebody paying somebody for a spot. We hear, and remember, I'm going to say it, there from time to time, persons will say things in passing. Saying something is in passing. We need evidence. We need information to go on. So persons can make comments that I have staff doing this. The ministry has over 1,000 members of staff. I don't know which staff. So if we can get a little more details, names, in confidence, of course, right, supplied to us, then we will be able to investigate various allegations. But many times the allegations are not supported with any information of substance to help us to investigate. But you gave me a name and I wrote it down, Anthony Gray from Rose Heights, St. James.
All right, Member Williams has been waiting, and then Member Holness after.
Hello, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Pierce, I just want to take you back a little to the qualifications, the criteria for admission to the program. And earlier you outlined a number of, conditions. For example, persons have to be literate, farming experience, no criminal records. However, I want to zero in particularly on the issue of the being refused a visa, prior to your application. In my view, that tends to be somewhat onerous. And the question I want to ask, this criteria is set by the employers, the Canadian authorities, or is it the Jamaica? Is it that the criteria is set here in Jamaica?
No, that criteria, as I had mentioned earlier, if you have been refused
the
a
specific visa requirement, correct.
if you have been refused a visa before, it is highly unlikely that your visa will be granted.
Yes, hold a moment.
No,
there.
but
hold a moment. The question as it relates to having been refused a visa before on the form actually asks you if you have been refused a visa within a limited period of time.
That's where I'm going.
My recollection in asking my own constituents, I've said to them, have you applied for and been refused a visa in the last 2 years? My experience has been, as a member of parliament, 99% of the persons I pre-interview for qualification of the program actually get through on the program. I do a rigorous exercise with the criteria set. So anybody refused a visa in the last 2 years, I would have a challenge. I don't send them forward. But somebody refused a visa 3, 4, 5 years ago, I have had go off comfortably on the program. So if you have been deported, is different.
No, I understand that clearly. If you've been deported, you have an issue.
And refused the visa, you are usually able to get through after 2 or 3 years has passed. And usually the countries that are of concern would be Canada, England, and the UK, those major countries that people would want to run off to. And I think that is, yes, the US, Canada, and the UK. Those are the 3 countries I would normally ask about.
Yes.
And I have found, I don't think members of parliament need to be that worried, though the PS said, if you have ever, I don't ask if you have ever, because it would almost negate any of our persons going off on the Farmwork program.
And that is why that aspect of the qualification outlined earlier struck me. So I thank you very much, Madam colleague or Member Holness.
Well, Member
Mrs.
Holness.
Because let me ask you, let me just, before Madam AG, you would understand the reason why I raised the question. Madam PS, sorry, my apologies. Because earlier you gave the impression from your outline that if you have ever been refused a visa, then obviously you're out. So that is why I raised the question.
I stand corrected with that. I stand corrected.
Very well. Thank you very much. Another question that I would wish to raise. All right. So, for example, as members of parliament, we get a certain allocation for new persons, correct? So, for example, okay. So you're allocated a number of persons as a member of parliament who you can interview, screen, and propose for the program, correct? Each member of parliament?
Yes, traditionally, yes.
Now, let's say the member of parliament proposes 20 persons, all right? But during the process, along the way, someone may have, well, you indicated earlier basically a 3 to 4 tier system where you may drop out of the program.
Right.
So,
at
for
different
example,
stages of the process.
Yes, so you may pass the initial screening and then you reach the medical and you're out. Or you may pass initial screening, medical, and you may not get the visa, so you're out. The question I want to ask: does a member of parliament gets a second bite of the cherry? Does she?
I really don't know what you mean.
Let's say, because there are some issues that no matter how well you screen, then it becomes at the level of the Ministry of Labour, it's out of your hands. No, I'm just asking. So let's say 10 of my persons. I would
encourage MP Holness to have a session with all of you. She's very good at screening the persons who she recommends.
And my final question is this. I'm a member of parliament for a Kingston constituency. Pardon me? So you have, I guess you guys have preempted me and you know where I'm going. So I'm a member of parliament for a Kingston constituency. One of the requirements is that you have to have farming experience. Is it that I'm at a disadvantage from day one? Because I represent a constituency where there. And my question is.
Member Williams, let me commiserate with you. as an urban
Yes,
MP.
I have Mr. Robinson. Well,
We
Mr. Chair.
border. I go through this all the time as well,
Yes.
because we don't have in our constituencies farms.
Enough farms, yeah.
So yes, we are at a disadvantage, and the rural MPs get more cards than we do. You know that.
Okay.
Chairman, can I tell the members that there was a time when urban MPs did not get any applications at all.
Which leaves me,
right? And that has changed. So
which
at least, because we recognize that sometimes people migrate from the country parts, well, not sometimes, all the time, people migrate from the rural areas into Kingston, and they quite likely would have had maybe a farming experience.
Okay, which points me now to my final question. What exactly are these workers required to do specifically? In terms of, I know it might be difficult to outline everything, but what exactly are you required to do abroad? Because I know persons who went abroad. I know a gentleman from another it's a Kingston constituency. He went on the program. He went on the program 3 times, and he had no farming experience, but he's from Kingston, and he worked so well that he as you would say, the employers requested him. So he went back. He had no farming experience. He's a Kingston man. In fact, he did part-time auto mechanic work. He went back. So hold on. So my
Member,
Mr. Chair, can I be protected to complete my question?
Want me to protect you from your colleagues?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. You're protected
yes,
from your
sir,
colleagues.
From my rural colleagues.
From your rural. All right. You
yes,
and I,
including
I think we are the only 2 urban ones.
Including Mr. Enriquez, member Enriquez. So my question, what I was saying, is the job description so intricately, tied to farming, meaning, you know, apart from, because the impression I'm getting, some people say they went and picked apples. Some people tell me that they went and picked apples. So how much farming experience do you need to pick apples?
Member, apart from my little square that I have in my backyard,
yes.
I am not a farmer. I can only tell you that in some of having traveled before, it may seem simple to you about picking apple, but it is arduous work, right? It is labor intensive. When they're pruning the trees and they're out there for hours and they have targets to meet in terms of the number of apples they pick per hour. When they're picking cherries, for example, there is a skill to it because they can't bruise the cherries. When you go and you buy your cherries, member siblings, you don't want them bruised and tattered. You want them looking nice and red, right? So that, so there are different skill sets.
Growing up and going to the country as a young lad, we used to do a lot of that.
The ones who get placed in the greenhouses, they use a lot of technology, right? And so the farm worker has to be able to read and understand how to apply chemicals. You know, these greenhouse technology is very high tech. I once visited a farm that was outdoor, but it was a organic farm that didn't use pesticides and so forth, that use, they use different insects to control, and they use computer technology that is taking how many pictures per minute, measuring the insect load that is in the atmosphere. I mean, these are really, some of them are really high-tech farms. So it's not just about going and plowing a piece of land and maybe chopping cane like what they used to do years ago. The agriculture has gotten a lot more high-tech, and if it's not high-tech, in many instances, it is it's labor-intensive. So persons have to be able, we don't know when somebody comes, right? If member Sibley comes to me tomorrow and says he wants to go and work on a farm, right? I don't know which employee I'm going to be able to place member Sibley's. And when I put member Sibley's, when I put member siblings in our database, I can't flag him and say, he can only go to a greenhouse and this one can only go to an apple. You have to, you pick, you try to identify persons that
Member
meet
Williams
all the
wants
criteria.
Yes, I'm conscious of time.
Yeah.
We have a number of persons waiting to ask questions. But
I'm
I
done now, Mr.
don't
Chair.
want us to go too much in this detail because we
Yes.
have been given a commitment of a briefing session related to the programs run by the ministry.
Yeah.
So let's hold those types of questions for that, and let's deal with the matters in front of us. Member Holness?
Member Williams, I will spend some time with you and other MPs from Kingston. I have a farm set up for the purpose of helping you with farming experience. Okay? So PS, we're going back to the audit, and AG, you would want to listen up as well. I note the balance in the ministry's deposit account for the Farmwork and the indication that Canada is audited. I want to have an appreciation if there is anything to audit in terms of any remittances, anything at all from the US side. 1. 2, though I appreciate that audit is done in Canada, I want to appreciate whether or not an audit is done again in Jamaica when monies now are remitted back into the account here in Jamaica to see how we track what the various deductions are, how reasonable those amounts are, and to the extent that we can prove what was deducted. And finally, if those monies in the account here are in any way invested, earning any interest, what happens with them? Also, from the Farmwork program, the Liaison and the entire operation, do they also get monitored in terms of any capital assets that they have? Do they own any houses there? Do they own vehicles who pay for these sort of things? So we have an appreciation as well. At some point, and I suspect you will probably come back to us with it, we would love to see exactly how they are ultimately compensated. Do we have people who live in Canada and never come back to Jamaica, but we are paying them as Jamaicans working in Canada when they're so happy to reside permanently there at the expense of Jamaica? So lots of questions, and I know we don't have much time left.
Sorry, just procedurally, there AG and there are some representatives from the Ministry of Finance. Given the time, we're not likely to start the audit of the AG's department today because we'll have to cut off in about half an hour because the place has to be sanitized, etc. So the reps from the Ministry of Finance, I know you've been here waiting, but if you want to go, you can, and we will start with the AG's department first thing next week. But go ahead, AG and PS.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I think Member Holness will have to repeat. She asked quite a bit of questions, but I want to go back, before I answer those questions, I just want to go back to a question asked by Member Clark earlier, because I did in fact table a special report on the Farmwork program in 2017. And in that report, I set out at that point in time, that was based on the information that I had available, the total number of farms at that point in time that were contracted under the program, and I gave a 3-year thing. So 2013, 2014, 2015. I know it's a little dated, but bear with me. That was the information available at the time. So in 2013, there were 619 farms, and there were 984 visits to those farms by 11 LOs. Yes? In 2014, there was a slight dip. There was an increase in the number of farms on the program, 644, and we had 966 visits with 12 LOs. And of course, in 2015, there were 635 farms on the program, a slight dip, but there was an increase in the number of visits of 1,237 with 12 farms. But what we noted is that for some, there was no more than 2 visits at times for the season to a farm by a liaison officer. And it was obvious to us that with the number of farms that you have and the number of liaison officers, that it would be difficult. But what they did not have at that point in time was a structured mechanism in place that would set out their target, recognizing totally what the gaps were as a consequence, and so they would have a timetable, because what you also have liaison officers that actually undertake administrative functions. So in addition to going out, they do undertake some minimal administrative functions, and that is done in order to get the segregation of duties that I would have reported on the lack of that over the years. Now, let me just clarify another point that was raised with respect to their remuneration. I'm not aware that accommodation is paid for the liaison officers. We have not identified that in the review of their salaries. They are not provided with motor vehicles, but they are given a motor vehicle loan. And that is something that we monitor. And there's a cap on that. Generally, the request for a motor vehicle loan must come back to the management committee for approval. If we don't see that approval, where there are probably 1 or 2 situations where we never saw that, that is something that we would raise. But what we have been able to ascertain over the time is that there are faithful recovery of the amounts given for the loans. There is a matter that we raised, and I may have raised it as early as 2011, where we saw a Jamaican being employed in an administrative function in the office that is really reserved for Canadian citizens. And I think that is based on the labor agreements. I think that there are some functions that really ought to be actually filled by locals. But that situation, I didn't see a repeat of that, and I think that person was eventually transferred over into the liaison position that did out visits to the farms. I think there were another question that you asked.
All right, critical other questions is, I appreciate that you audit the deposit account in Canada, but I'm not so sure if we do any audits here at all, how we reconcile funds coming back here and whether or not those monies are invested. What do we really do with that pool of funds?
I will allow the PS to answer what is done with that pool of funds, because I do believe that there was what existed some time ago, the compulsory savings. And of course, there was some protest over that, and I think that ceased. Yes, where so monies were remitted to Jamaica and they were put in accounts for the farm workers for when they return. I think that is an issue in terms of
that doesn't happen anymore.
And it doesn't happen anymore. But I don't know.
I think 2015 was the last year.
Right, but I don't know if there's any balance outstanding to any farm workers. I can't speak to that. But in relation, I think the requirement now, I think, is a standard at 5%.
No, it's
$5.
It's 5.45 Canadian.
Right, so not 5%, but a 5.45.
5.45 Canadian per day.
Right, and of course that 5.45 is actually split differently.
Right.
A portion of that is put to funds that will use to actually take care of the welfare of the farmers in terms of insurance when they fall ill, etc. And a percentage is sent to Jamaica as administrative fee, management fees, really. So on the Canadian side, what we would do is it's a very tedious and complex process, because we have to review the returns submitted by the farmers to determine how much is actually received, or how much should be received by the farmers. And you have pay sheets being submitted, I think, on a weekly basis. So it is
Fortnightly.
really fortnightly. So it is actually a tedious process that I think is the attempts are being made to automate it, but it's not totally automated. So we determine what it is that the liaison service should collect from the farmers. And once that is done, there is the remittance element of it, that we ensure that the remittance, the full amount are remitted, those that are due by the ministry is actually remitted. And then on this side, we will ask an officer just to go to the Ministry of Labour to verify that the sums that they say that would have been, we see being remitted from the ministry, has in fact been received by the ministry and duly recorded. Anything that happens after that in terms of the use of the funds, I'd ask the Permanent Secretary to speak to that. We have not audited it for quite some time on this end.
So, AGM, my question to you is, do you think it is due for being audited anytime soon?
It is something that we had actually, well, I think some years ago, we had asked an officer to go and do probably a greater depth, but I do not believe that we have looked at the use of it. It is something that we can do.
All right, Member Guy, then Member Sibley's.
Thank you very much, Chairman.
Sorry, there are still some questions to be answered. Turn on your mic, turn on your mic.
I was saying that Pierre should just complete a part of the question in terms of how we're using that pool of funds once it is resident now here in Jamaica, and whether or not, in addition to use of funds, we are trying to earn any additional income by putting it on any form of deposit or some sort of interest-bearing fund.
Thank you. So in addition to some of, just for completeness, the report is here that explains what the funds in Canada is used for: administrative, the health insurance for the workers, and so forth, and their NIS. Locally, out of the 545, we get $1 per day. That $1 goes towards offsetting the cost of maintaining the center at East Street. At East Street, we have dormitory facilities, which and there are various costs surrounding maintaining the dorms. We cover the cost of medical for the worker, that is the worker going to Canada. U.S. workers do not do a medical. Since COVID, we now cover the cost of the PCR test for them. Transportation, utilities, the maintenance of the vehicles that are used in the program to transport the workers, whether it be to the airport or to the VAC, that is also covered. And in the report that I submitted, you will see that we are in the process, for example, of procuring new vehicles to use in the program. Some of you would be familiar with the school bus. The school bus. Well, we are in the process of procuring 2 new vehicles, because those vehicles, while they might be very sturdy, maintenance is very difficult for us and expensive. We don't have persons that maintain those vehicles. So we're in the process of procuring new vehicles. So any capital improvement, for example, at the center, some years ago, we did some refurbishing work for the dormitory facilities, the processing area where the workers do their visa processing and so forth. So those are some of the expenses that are covered out of the monies that are sent back.
All right. Member Guy?
Thank you very much, Chairman. Before I get into the question, Chairman, I just want to advise my colleagues that the Farmwork program is a very hard, arduous one for the workers. It's not a rosy thing. I've been on the program already.
You went in what capacity?
In 2003, Chairman.
As a doctor or as a...
No, as a parliamentarian. And we went to look at some of the farms, the greenhouses, you know, and it's hard work, and it's not a bed of roses. And we got apples that were picked, we got apricots, we got grapes, tomatoes. No, we didn't go to the cherry section yet. But the reality is that they work in various areas, and they're even working greenhouses. We visited one that was a 50-acre greenhouse that Jamaicans were working. And interestingly, Chairman, if I may digress a little, they were paying Jamaicans to tie up the vines of the tomato plants by the number of ties, by the hour. There's this Jamaican fellow who was tying so fast that they sought to pay him by the number he did, because he was exceeding the numbers that they were doing. Just speaking about the quality of Jamaican workers. But back to local now, PS. There are two things I wanted to ask about, and the first one is the elephant in the room at North Street is that everybody knows that some corruption is going on somewhere. And I say this out of the background that I see many of my constituents, and as patients too, who go, and they tell you a lot of horror stories about extortion. Yeah. They tell you that they will take their blood pressure, and nurse will tell them that it's high, but something is given and it miraculously comes down so they can continue on the process of doing the medical. I say the elephant in the room because speaking to former and current ministers, they have heard of it, and I think it's high time that the ministry does something about it. If it means that you're going to have to set up cameras to see some of the things that happen, then it means that that will have to be done. But the workers are the ones who are being exploited. The workers are the ones who, in addition to the fees that they have to pay, will have to carry some insurance money so they can go back on the program. It's unfortunate that I mention it here, but it's a reality, and it's a reality that has to stop. And until we can do that, then the program will not be as pristine as we expect it to be, having regard to the fact that these people work very hard to earn some money. The other point I want to make, to ask about, is and P.S., I want you to explain this for me. I know it might not be within the control of the ministry. But the passport has to have farmer on it for easier passage, easier farmer as your occupation. And we are told that a lot of them do not pass the selection, and it has happened because their passport does not have farmer on it. Now, we know as a cultural practice in Jamaica that people who do menial work do not want to put necessarily their occupation as that on a passport. So some of them are drivers, so they put driver. Some are carpenters, and they put carpenter. But when they go for the selection, some of them are refused simply because farmer is not on the passport. Is it a requirement of the Canadian and U.S. authorities that the person who's coming to work on a farm work has to have that occupation on their passport? And the other reason, Member Williams, I think it was why many of the persons who go and are requested back by their employers is that they have additional skills. It's asked for in the form as well. So if you're a carpenter and a farmer, you go up there and you repair the dorms when things go wrong. So which is why they would want you to come back on an annual basis. But P.S., can you answer that question for me, please?
Member, I don't know that it is a requirement for it to be in your passport that you are a farmer. There was some years ago what had happened, and I'm not going to say whether it's US or Canada. Some years ago, we noticed that we had a higher refusal rate because we look at those who are refused the visa because that helps you to modify your selection process. If we send 100 people, we want 100 to get the visa. Some years ago, we had a number of persons being refused the visa, and the commonality that was in the passport was that they didn't have farming as their experience. But we do have lots of persons, as many of you, and Member Holness, I see her nodding, will tell you that farming doesn't have to be in your passport. I'm going to make a general comment, and this isn't specific to the program. I have seen many different countries' passports, and there are many other countries that don't put an occupation in the passport. And maybe it is something that we need to look at. I don't know why we have it in our passport, an occupation. It's not relevant for you traveling. So, you know, if it is barring persons or affecting persons being granted their visa, I don't know that it is a requirement for it to be there.
You know, PS, you can apply for a passport here without an occupation, you know. And I can tell you of a real experience, and I can give you a name afterwards too, of a person who applied for a passport. No occupation came on the passport, applied for the Farmwork program, and was told that there's no occupation on the passport listed there. So they had to reapply for another passport with the term farmer as occupation on it before they were considered.
All right. P.S. Before I go to Member Sibley's, I have a specific question. Do farm workers abroad, where they have to be tested for COVID, do they have to cover the cost of that test, or is it the employer who does?
You mean in the jurisdiction overseas?
Yeah.
They don't cover the cost of the test. I don't know who covers it, whether it's the employer or maybe it's government covered, but they don't pay for the cost of that test.
So it's not the individual farm worker then?
No, they're not paying for the cost of that test.
Okay, all right. And vaccination, well, vaccination would be free in most cases, yeah. All right, Member Sibley's?
Chairman, just one thing before you go to Member Sibley's, just for the benefit of both our members here and persons who are applying for the Farmwork program. Appreciate that if you are a mechanic, a carpenter, a plumber, you'd be surprised to know how many persons have been hired because they can operate a backhoe, operate a tractor. Many times when the interviews are done, we do not sell the person who is going in the way that we could. So in our interviews as members of parliament, we should have them tell us what other skills they possess, and we should put that on the form. It has made a significant difference to farmers who have ended up going off to just operate on tractors, they're mechanics, they've gone to do the carpentry at the farm. Because once that skill is needed, it is not only the fact that you're a farmer that they look at. So for those in Kingston, Central Kingston, and for Chairman, you should incorporate some of that in your documentation of the individuals you're putting forward.
I will engage as a consultant when I get the next batch of farm worker. Just as a follow-up, of course, for current applicants in this COVID period from Jamaica who would have to be tested before they go, they would have to cover that cost of that test?
For the ones going to Canada, that is covered from the pool of funds that from the $1 per day, that is covered. But for the ones going to the United States, the worker covers it upfront, but the employer reimburses them when they get there.
Okay. And that is the antigen test, not the PCR?
For the United States, it's the antigen test, and for Canada, it's the PCR test.
Okay, thank you. Member Sibley's.
Thank you, Chair. I will start with the 800-pound gorilla that is in the room. The alleged corruption in the farm working system. You see, PS, I agree with member Guy that there is a perceived, if not real, corruption that is not yet investigated by our internal auditor, our Auditor General. And I will bring up a point that can be included in the scope of a future audit. And that in my constituency of Clarendon Northern, there's an allegation that there's a liaison officer whose family is given certain privileges to travel on the program, that all, if most, if not all, that liaison officer family travel on the program. And it is extended to that there are times when these family members return to Jamaica, they sometimes say they don't like a particular form, and they are sent to a different form. Those allegations are very strong in the constituency of Clarendon Northern. I will provide the name should the auditor inquire of me.
And if I inquire of you, Member Siblings?
I will provide.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, you know, I don't know. I know the PS will say that she doesn't have the skill set sometimes. So I am offering two persons who I know have the skill set to investigate. And I'm sure if the PS want it, or any member of the Ministry of Labor who is authorized, I will give them the information. So the question that I'm asked to ask is, do members of staff of the Ministry of Labor get Farmwork card to distribute?
In 2019, there were...
Yes, the question is current because I've had persons approach me in my own constituency to do letters for them, and they have received Farmwork tickets. And I've said to them, I will not be able to do a letter for you because there is a designated number on the cards that I get, and I can only respond to the ministry in relation to those. Since you got from someone within the ministry, you go back to that person for them to process. And they would have been able to say, look, 6 of us got. So I'm asking the question because it appears that there are persons who are able to get these farmer tickets outside of the system of distributing through the members of parliament and the councillors.
So what I was telling you is that in 2019, I'm aware. No, but
notice
member,
I'm not there.
I'm coming. I'm not aware that any recent forms have been issued.
This is within the last month, if not 6 weeks, and I saw it. I can tell you, I got a strange call while the previous minister was there. Somebody was telling me they had my 5 Farmwork tickets ready. And I made sure to continue the conversation until they realized I was the wrong person. And I had reported it to, God rest her soul, former minister. I got nothing from it. Because they were providing me Farmwork tickets through the ministry. And I saw nothing coming of it. But I was surprised when a member of my constituent, who I had not given a ticket, came now for me to do the letter to produce just now. It is not 4 weeks since. And I said, look, take it back down to the ministry, along with the other 5 of you who got it, and the 6 of you go to the person who gave them to you.
Well, member, I don't know about that. That would be something new to me. Every form that is issued is recorded in our system as to who it is issued to.
Who audits the list of forms issued vis-a-vis the members of parliament who got them, or the counsels who got them and reconcile to ensure that if you issue through the official channel 2,000 Farmwork tickets, 2,000 is what you're processing. Because obviously those persons over the years have been comfortably able to get through. And they do get through before the people who have walked the official route.
Hence the insurance that member guy spoke to. It seems to us as members of parliament that it's almost like a hustle being conducted in the Ministry of Labour with regards to the Farmwork program. And we are asking you, Madam PS, to have an investigation. And through you, Chair, we are hoping that the AG also look at it when they go to audit the Ministry of Labour, because I know no matter how long the thing had gone on, auditors can find what happened. They don't have to rush to do the audit, because auditors have skill set that will detect if something went wrong or is going in the wrong way. Hence, the 800-pound gorilla is still at the Ministry of Labour, and that's what I believe with other members of this committee. P.S. A question was asked earlier with regards to our liaison officers. In terms of housing.
I just wanted, before you move on, I wanted to add my comments, Member Sills. All right, go ahead, Member Wilson. Right, so, P.S., I want to join my voice to the chorus. Let me just remove my mask a little. In Westmoreland Western, my constituency, I have a similar situation. Just 2 weeks ago, I was called Saturday morning that persons were going around collecting names for Farmwork. Now, as a member of parliament, I was a bit shocked. So they asked for all their details. Now, since becoming a member of parliament, I have a system in the constituency where persons requesting whatever, they would go to the constituency office and sign up. Now, I have persons who are saying, listen, there is a program where you don't have to go through the MP office, right? I'm now being told anecdotally that there's a parallel Farmwork program that runs with the official Farmwork program in the ministry. Now, my question to you is it the first time you're hearing this allegation? I have no evidence of it. This is what's being told to me. But is it the first time that you're hearing such allegations? And if this is the first time or you have heard it before, have you conducted any form of investigation to check the veracity of such allegations?
Member, it is not the first time we have heard the allegations. When we hear the allegations and we get any information that can provide any lead, we work very closely with CTOC, and there have been a number of cases with CTOC. I don't remember them offhand because it's not something that I track routinely, but there are a number of cases with CTOC that have been investigated. In most instances, what I do find happen is that persons pay money allegedly to someone employed to the ministry and to be placed on the program, and the person ends up getting the runaround, trying to move them along. And when they're not moving along in the process and they get frustrated, information will come to us, whether the person visits us, and when we check our system, we realize we don't have them anywhere in our system. And, in some instances, we have persons who are willing to go to the police and report it and give evidence. So there are cases that I know we work with CTOC and various charges have been made. Some years ago, and I'm going in the annals of my memory now, I think it could be as much as about 4 years ago, there was an early morning arrest that MOCA had made, where they did 2 parishes. There was in St. Catherine, there was a whole ring that was operating in St. Catherine and Clarendon. And there was an early morning, I remember there was an early morning sort of raid and arrests and charges that were made. Now, these things happen when we get information that we can work with the authorities to bring the perpetrators to justice. We periodically do a campaign on the billboards and in the newspaper, and coincidentally, it was just on Friday I said to the director, we have not ramped up the campaign since this year, but we have a campaign, a Don't Get Scammed campaign, where we have the videos running on the video boards and in the tax offices and so forth, and in the newspaper. So we do that periodically, where we're encouraging persons. You don't need to pay. Unfortunately, there are some persons who believe that if they pay, even though they're going through the legitimate process, they believe that if I pay something, that I will jump the line or I will get through faster. I think the way out of that is we have to get more jobs to be able to satisfy the demand, right? I think we have too few new jobs coming up, and the demand is great. So we need to grow the program in terms of new jobs.
Thank you, PS. And just to follow up, now being that you have conducted these investigations, have any system been implemented to somewhat thwart the efforts of these deviant behaviors of persons trying to sell the cards? Because, as I said, this is just 2 weeks ago that I was confronted with these information. Is it that the ministry has a system in place to internally audit and ensure that these things are not, they don't continue?
We do have various procedures, member. What I know also happens is that persons photocopy the forms, and with color photocopier these days, they make a copy and it looks like the real form. And we have been told that persons photocopy them and sell them to persons. Now, every form that we issue is recorded. So we are able to tell that member Holness got form number between X number and Y. So if we see that number repeated coming back into us, and there are other features on the application which I would not want to necessarily say openly, that then tells us what is a genuine form and what is a non-genuine form. But we have systems in place and procedures that we have implemented to sort of strengthen the process along the way. Remember, there was a time, for example, I was told that that the very security at our office was also part of a ring. That security was replaced, and then what we do is we continually rotate the security. So nobody stays there for months and months and get very comfortable and familiar with
PS,
the
please
processes.
add to the responsibility of any security you hire. Do not send people to the Member of Parliament's office for Farmwork. Do not send them there to ask for letters. They have been doing it over the years. They need to cut it out, because it sends a bad message when persons from your constituency feel that you are able to just write them a letter for them to get the farm work ticket, because the security at the ministry, and every one of them come back and tell you, security at the ministry has said I should go to the member of parliament office, get a letter, and take it back down so I can get a farm work ticket. They are setting up the members of parliament.
That I can speak to. All of us, it happens, I would say, almost on a daily basis. They go, them say, come to the MP, you ask who tell you that, them tell you somebody down at the ministry, you try probe more, and you're correct, it sets us up and it makes us look bad. So it has to be addressed. All right, let me just, you finished, Member Wilson?
One last thing in terms of the audit of the program. Do you have an internal system that you review the program yearly?
You mean the procedures for the program?
Right, to check just to do a general internal audit and assessment of how the program is operating. Do you have that internally within the ministry?
I mean, internally within the ministry, we review generally our procedures, and if things come up, we try to strengthen them. But I wouldn't say that for the farmer program that annually each year we have a specific audit that is done. I think Member Holness has asked for an audit.
I have asked for an audit. And what I would like to follow up on that question, when was the last time an audit outside of the Auditor General auditing of the financial statements? When last an internal audit has been conducted on the Farmwork program and its operations?
I would have to check. I'm not sure. I don't know offhand. I couldn't.
The internal auditor is here, Chair, and maybe the internal auditor can answer the question: was it done within the last 5 years, based on the internal auditor's memory, or the last 10 years? How long ago can they recall doing an audit of the Farmwork program?
An audit of the Farmwork program is actually ongoing.
So what would have been the previous time before
The
this?
last one was done 2015.
2015, so 6 years ago, okay.
Chair, I want to ask with regards to the liaison officer, PS, the job description. Each liaison officer has a job description.
Yes.
Very well. And with regards to salary, is that approved by the Ministry of Finance? Is the liaison officer positions that are approved by the Ministry of Finance, and their salary approved by the Ministry of Finance to the normal route that we know?
So the structure of the liaison service in Canada is currently something that we're working with the Ministry of Finance to have an established structure in Canada.
Wait a minute.
So hold on. Just let me finish, please.
Time is of the essence.
So established structure meaning a defined structure that is approved by the Ministry of Finance, okay? And that would then go on the ministry's establishment. We do not have that. What has happened is over the years, the structure has expanded and it has morphed, and it is what it is now. However, the salaries, I'm coming to the salaries. However, the salaries are approved by the Ministry of Finance.
So the structure to date, because what you have said is that it is currently being looked at, but prior to now, the structure is not a structure that is approved by the Ministry of Finance. It seemed to to be something that the Ministry of Labor, within its own internal processes, have put together a structure and have made payment. One thing that is confusing me, though, PS, is that the Ministry of Finance does not have an approved structure, but the salary is approved by the Ministry of Finance. Reconcile this for me, because how I know the Ministry of Finance work is that they don't approve salary outside of a structure per se. So I'm finding that a little bit difficult. So can you reconcile that and let us know how is it that the Ministry of Finance approves salaries without the Ministry of Finance having something as in a structure that they would have approved?
Member, that is a question whose information predates me. What I know is what I've reported, that the structure in Canada was not approved by the Ministry of Finance, and we have been working with the Ministry of Finance to come up with what would be the ideal structure for them in Canada. I can't tell you, I cannot reconcile it. It is what what exists in the ministry, and it predates.
So you get document at a circular, whatever the document is, name is given to that document, that approves salary for the liaison officer from the Ministry of Finance. You have received that since you became PS, a document to say that they approve the salary.
So since I'm permanent secretary, there was some agitation by the officers in Canada who had not been granted any salary increase for a number of years. And I was not going to approve those salary increases without the approval of the Ministry of Finance. And that is how the salaries that they now have was approved by the Ministry of Finance. I cannot speak to prior to my tenure. I can speak to what has happened since I'm permanent secretary.
So you have received, you're saying you have received
Yes.
correspondence
Yes.
giving you the go-ahead to increase the salary
Right.
from the ministry for liaison officers.
Yes.
With regards to housing, because earlier the Auditor General said she's not aware of liaison officers being given housing, but it is while it is speculated, therefore, that liaison officers are given housing benefits.
But just to add to that, Sir Chair, and my colleague, when the question was posed by me, PS, to you, you did mention that they get accommodation, and
Right, and
AG stated that she has not seen that.
I will defer to the AG who looks at it, right, more closely than me in terms of the figures. The officers in the United States do get a housing allowance.
But perhaps it might miss the AG department.
Hold on, Member Sibley. Just let Member Miller finish.
It's just that my question wasn't finished, Chair. It's in the middle of my question. My friend, Member Miller, wanted to put a clarification. So I would like to finish my question, if it pleases you. The question is, PS, how is it then that you are going to defer to the AG with regards to housing? The question is, do you have knowledge if persons, liaison officers, get an housing benefit? You know, because the AG could be incorrect. You are the permanent secretary.
I will have to check, Member Sibley's. I do not want to tell you the incorrect thing. I can speak definitively for the officers in the United States. Why I said I would defer to the Madam AG is because she looks at the accounts on an annual basis, so she sees the charges and expenses.
Further, could you check on this for me as well, PS? If there is housing benefits, if it was approved by the Ministry of Finance, and if the Ministry of Finance have been informed about all the benefits currently being given to our liaison officers. And if they are not, if the Ministry of Finance is not informed, will you inform the Ministry of Finance of the details of the benefits that are being received by our liaison officers?
Okay.
All right, member Sibley's, we are all about to be kicked out because, you know, the place has to be sanitized and the search team. So you are almost at the end of your questioning?
Yes, Chair. I will yield to you, Chair, on that matter because the PS is not able to give the response because she needs to check some information. So I await that information, Chair, and at a convenient time, if there's need, I'll ask further questions.
Member Miller, you had intervened. You just complete your question.
No other questions, Sir Chair. I just needed for that clarity to be presented to the committee in terms of the accommodation allowance for liaison officers in Canada because of the different answers that were given by the PS and the AG. So just to bring that to the committee.
All right, so PS, once you have done your research, you can send a note back to the committee to provide the clarity on that. Let me thank the ministry. You've been here a number of times. Thank you for the diligence and for answering the questions as best as you can. Members, next week we're going to be dealing with the Auditor General's audit report, and there was a resolution passed at the sitting last week, Tuesday, which referred not just the audit report of the Auditor General for the period April 2016 to March 2019, but also the Ministry of Finance and Public Service report on the appropriation accounts of the Auditor General's Department for the year 2013-14, 2016-17, and 2017-18. And we will deal with those matters next week, Tuesday, when we meet. Is there any other business that any member wants to raise? Could I have a motion for the adjournment? Member Chin, seconded by Member Williams. Thank you, members.